Unit 14 Samuel Johnson's Preface to Shakespeare. Samuel Johnson, born on 18 September 1709, and his life ended in 13 December 1784. Often called Dr. Johnson, was an English writer who made lasting contribution as poet, playwright, essayist, moralist, critic, biographer, editor, and lexicographer. Johnson was not a healthy infant, and there was considerable question as to whether he would survive. His father was a bookseller. He was educated at Lichfield Grammar School and spent a brief period at Oxford University, but was forced to leave due to his lack of money. Unable to find teaching work, he drifted into writing career. In 1735, Johnson married Elizabeth Tetty Porter. In 1737, Johnson moved to London. Dictionary was published on 15th April 1755. Johnson's wife had died in 1752. Johnson was continually short of money despite of success of his dictionary. Johnson spent considerable time in Edinburgh in 1717s. Johnson died on 13th December 1784 and is buried at Westminster Abbey. Johnson's general approach to criticism. Great contention of criticism is to find the faults of the moderns and beauties of the ancient. While an author is yet living, we estimate his power by his first performance, and when he is dead, we rate them by his best. The great contentions of criticism is to find fault of modern and beauties. Once again, I am quoting here, while an author is yet living, we estimate the power of his first performance, and when he is dead, we rate them by his best. Yes. As among the works of nature, no man can properly call a river deep or a mountain high without the knowledge of many mountains and many rivers. So, in the productions of genius, nothing can be styled excellent till it has been compared with other works of the same kind. But are read without any other reason than desires of pleasures, and are therefore prized only as a pleasure is obtained. Yet, thus unassisted by interest or passion, they have passed through variations of taste and changes of manners, and as they devolved from one generation to another, have received no honors at every transmission. His ability on holding mirror of life and being a poet of nature, Shakespeare is above all writer, at least above all modern writer, the poet of nature, the poet that holds up to his reader a faithful mirror of manners and of life. This, therefore, is the praise of Shakespeare, that his drama is a mirror of life, that who has mazed his imagination in following the phantoms which other writers rise up before him, may here be cured of his delirious ecstasy by reading the human sentiments in human languages, by scenes from which the hermits may estimate the transition of the world and professor predict the progress of the passion. Johnson was particularly qualified to pass judgment on faults and beauty of literary composition, the beauties of Shakespeare. Johnson was particularly qualified to pass judgment on the faults of beauties of literary composition. Shakespeare is above all writer at least above all modern writer, the poem of nature, the poet that holds up his reader a faithful mirror of manners and of life. This is, therefore, is to praise the Shakespeare that his drama is a mirror of life. As elaborated by Johnson, Shakespeare never fails to attain his purpose. The Shakespeare approximates the remote and familiarity, the wonders, the event which he represents will not happen, but if it were possible, its expect would be probably such as he has assigned. Through all these denominations of the drama, Shakespeare's mode of composition is same, an interchange of seriousness and merriment, by which the mind is softened at one time and accelerated at another. But wherever be his purpose, whether to gladden or depress, or to contact the story without the vehemence or emotion, through the track of easy and familiar dialogue, he never fails to attain his purpose. As he commences, we laugh or mourn, or sit silent with quiet expectations, in tranquillity without indifference. Shakespeare approximate remote and familiarity wonderful. The stream of time, which is contrary, washing the dissoluble fabrics of other poet, passes without the injury by adamant of Shakespeare's. Shakespeare sacrificed the virtue to convenience. He makes no just distributions of good and evil. He makes no just distributions of good and evil, nor is always careful to show the virtuous disapprobations of the wicked. He carries his person indifferently through right and wrong, and at close dismiss them without further care, and leaves their example to operate by chance. The tragic comedy, neither comedy is nor tragedy, are not in accordance with rule. Moreover, some plots are loosely constructed and have improbable ending. Faults of Shakespeare. His first defect is that to which may be imputed more of the evil in books or in men. He sacrifices virtue to convenience and is so much more careful to please than to instruct that he sees to write without any moral purpose. Shakespeare plays are not in rigorous and critical sense either tragedy or comedy, but compositions of distinct kind exhibiting real state of sublunary nature, which partakes of a good and evil, joy and sorrow, mingled with endless varieties of proposition and innumerable moods of combinations and expressing the course of the world, in which the loss of one is gained of another, in which at the same time the reviler is hunting, hasting to his wine, and mourning by buying his friends, in which the magnanimity of one is sometimes mischiefs and many benefits are done in the hindered without design, and defeated by the frolics of another and many mischievous. Shakespeare has united the power of exciting laughter and sorrow not only in one mind, but is one compositions. Almost all the plays are divided into serious and lucidivous and characters, and in the successive evolutions of the design, sometimes produce seriousness and sorrow, and sometimes levity and laughter. It may be observed that in many of his plays that later part is evidently neglected. When he found himself near the end of his work, and in view of his reward, he shortened the labor to snatch the profit. He therefore remits his efforts where he should most vigorously exert them, and his catastrophe is improbable produced, or imperfectly represented. He chooses flamboyant and extravagant words. In narration, he affects the disproportionate pomp of dictions and wearisome trains of circumlocutions and tells the instance imperfectly in many words, which might have been more plainly delivered in few. Narration in dramatic poetry is naturally tedious as it is animated, unanimated, and inactive and abstract the progress of action. It should be therefore always be rapid and enlivened by frequent interpretation. Shakespeare found it an encumbrance and instead of lightening it by brevity, endeavor to recommend it by dignity and splendor. The fault in comedies is that Shakespeare is commonly gross in his jest. Neither his gentlemen or ladies possesses an delicacy. In his common scene, he is seldom very careful when he engages his character in reciprocations of smartness and contest of sarcasm. This their just or commonly gross and their pleasantry listeners. Neither his gentlemen nor his ladies have much delicacy nor sufficiently distinguish between or from his clowns by any appearance of refined manner. Whether he represented the real conversations of his time is not easy to determine. The rule of Elizabeth is commonly supposed to have been a time of stateliness, formality, and reserve. Yet, perhaps the relaxations of that servitude were not very elegant. His comic sense, he is seldom very successful when he engages his character in reciprocations of smartness and contest of sarcasm. The just are commonly gross and their pleasantry littleness. In tragedy, his performance seems constantly to be worse as his labor is more the effusions of passions with exigent force, out of therefore most striking and energetic, but whenever he solitude his inventions or strains his faculties, the offsprings of his throws is tumor, meanness, tedious, and obscurity. His violation on time and place. He had no regard to distinctions of time or place, but gives one age or nations without scruple, customs, institutions, and options of another, at expense not only of his livelihood but of possibility. Shakespeare, indeed, was not only the violator of chronology, to the unities of time and place he has shewed no regards and perhaps nearer views of the principle on which they stand will diminish their value. He had no regard to distinguish between the place or time, but gives one age of nations without the custom, institutions, and opinion. 2. The unities of time and place he has shown no regards. Samuel Johnson contributions to the literary criticism was devoted and compassion's man whose Christian morality permeated his work. Although he was a conservative Anglican, he respected those of others denominations who demonstrate and commitment to Christian teaching. He made lasting contributions to English literature as poet, essayist, moralist, novelist, literary critic, biographer, editor, and lexicographer. After 9 years of his dictionary, English language was published. Johnson skillfully present his view on mythology, imaginations, decorum, and imitations, as well as on pastoral and general and particular in literary criticism. In order to make the good critic, Johnson included the quotations from Bacon's, Hooker's, Milton's, Shakespeare, Spencer, and many other from literary field that Johnson thought were most important: natural science, philosophy, poetry, and theology. These codes and usages were all compared and carefully studied so that other cannot or could understand that words meant in literature. Beside direct literary criticism, Johnson emphasized the need to establish a text that accurately reflects what an author wrote in his preface. Johnson analyzed the various versions of Shakespeare's play and argued how an editor should work on them.